I'm very excited to have Jilles here with me today. To give a little bit of background about Jilles, Jilles is a senior staff software engineer at Udemy currently. He brings over 10 years of experience in software.
Correct.
And not only is Jilles a contributor as an engineer at Udemy, he's a true advocate for dev experience, developer experience, especially when it comes to AI. Yeah, welcome, Jilles.
Thanks, dude. I'm excited.
Excited to have you. So let's jump right in.
Okay.
How did you get into this? What sparked your interest in software and in programming? We had a talk 2 weeks ago, and you mentioned you started programming when you were 13. Can you talk a little bit about that?
I think I was a little younger even. The story is kind of, I don't want to say sad, but in not high school, but before high school. In the Netherlands, we call it basic school. It's like before high school. And we just moved to a new city, and I went to a new school, and I was like the odd guy out with red hair. Everybody had, not red hair. And I didn't really make any friends there. So at home, we had a computer. So every day, I would go home and I would just have the computer, but I was only allowed like a certain amount of time on the internet. So then after there was no internet, so I had this book, HTML and CSS, and I was like, I can just make my own internet.
Yeah.
And kind of started, instead of hanging out with people, I started writing websites.
That's inspiring.
It
shows how curious you are about this, truly. I want to pick your brain about a couple of things now.
Sure.
What does AI mean to you, and what does it mean to your workflow as a developer?
That's a good question. What it means to me, I don't know how I can answer what AI means to me. Like it doesn't mean much to me in the sense like it's very useful.
Yeah.
But I don't know how meaning. Like if anything, it maybe adds a little less meaning to being a software engineer. Right. Before I felt like I can write software, not many people can do this. And now it's like, yeah, your neighbor can probably write really good code using AI.
True.
But it definitely has a huge impact on the things that you're able to do and the things that you think you're able to do, right? Before, I knew I was good at making websites. Yeah. But if I had to make like a game, I wouldn't even try. Like there's all these things involved that I didn't know. Now, if I wanted to make a game, I could use AI and make a game. So I think it opened up a lot of different opportunities, and like there's no more limits to what you can do.
Yeah. And how does it affect your workflow today as a developer? How does it help you? Does it not help you?
Yeah.
And
So it's a double-edged sword. So it helps me in the way that, if I have to write a simple function, I can just write a prompt and it will do it perfectly. It actually has not always been as helpful because I'm like, I'll just have AI do it. It will write a ton of code and it doesn't actually do exactly what I want. So I had to kind of discover the correct workflow for me to use AI to my ability. And I feel like I kind of figured that out now, where it's just like I go back and forth for an hour with AI just to write a markdown document. And then once I have that markdown document, then I'm like, yo, AI, implement this.
That's cool. Can you talk a little bit about models? There's so many models out there, and it's not on purpose, but some of these models are good at certain tasks. Yeah. Whether companies that are making these models agree to it or not, and whether that was the purpose of it or not. Can you go over a couple of models that you use on the daily, and maybe a model that you use to plan, maybe a model that you use to actually implement?
Sure. So I have been very curious and invested in all these models. I try to follow them, every day. Hacker News, is there anything new? But I don't think by any means I'm like an expert on these models. I have no clue how they work underneath. I love large language models to use them, but all the guys at OpenAI, Anthropic, they are the real experts. But I can definitely share my experience with these models. So I think currently there's really three big ones, the US big ones that everybody's using. The first one, if we're talking about programming, is Anthropic's Claude, right? Claude Sonnet and Claude Opus.
Yeah.
I think still they are the best for programming. Anthropic has also capitalized on this by creating Claude Code, and almost anyone that uses Claude is using it for development, and it's doing amazing. You can install Claude Code on your server and just say like, hey, can you install Nginx and like for traffic here and block traffic from there. So I think Anthropic Claude is the number one for me at this moment. OpenAI, ChatGPT, that we all know and love, I think is the most popular one, and it's also I use it for just random questions. It's like, hey, how many degrees do I put this chicken in the oven for, and how long? I could probably ask this on Cloud, but like I just don't. And then there's Google's Gemini, which is known for its very long context window. So it has 1 million tokens. Token is like a sequence of characters, usually around 3 or 4. It's not necessarily a word, but it's what separates ChatGPT-ing the word from like ChatGPT and ing. So the model can like figure out what the word actually is.
Yeah.
And Gemini has the largest context window. So you could paste like a document with tons and tons of text. And if you do it in ChatGPT or in Claude, it's like, hey, sorry, this document is too long, make it shorter.
Yeah.
But in Google's Gemini, you can just paste in a long-ass document and ask it questions, and it will work really, really well.
Huh.
So those would say the 3 main ones that are US-based. And then there's a few Chinese models that are actually really good too. There's DeepSeek, and everybody knows DeepSeek because they just came in, and I don't know the exact details, but all these models were super, super expensive. And then DeepSeek came in and was like, hey, here, you can do this model. It's equally smart and it's much cheaper. Or at least that's my understanding of it. And it's a really good model. Qwen, it's a Chinese model from Alibaba. It's also really good at coding. And one thing that it's kind of, that's funny, but interesting, is that these models have much less restrictions. So for example, I've seen on the internet that someone asked Claude, can you make this game where, you shoot rockets? And Claude is like, I'm sorry, that's against my guidelines. And if you do that in a Chinese model, it's like, how many people do you want to kill with these rockets? Like there's not that many restrictions.
Yeah.
So I think, so DeepSeek, Qwen, and there's 2 other models that are also Chinese that I sometimes use just like play around. One is called GLM 4.5 by Z.ai. I don't know the details about it, but it's a really cool model. And I've used it for like just implementing some Go code here and there. Because have you heard of OpenRouter?
Yes.
Okay. So I have an OpenRouter account, and you can just choose models and then use existing tools like Cloud Code with a router or Open Code and just use various models. And I would just try out these models, and sometimes they have free options, right? So GLM 4.5 was free. That was very good. And I think that's it, or I might be missing one, but I think that's like my summary, quick summary.
Thank you for explaining those. I want to ask you, where do you see LLMs going? So we had LLMs, we had ChatGPT, right? Then this new nuance that Anthropic came out with was MCP servers.
Yeah.
So bringing in more context for those LLMs to produce accurate results.
Right.
What do you think is the next step, or has already come out? Maybe. Where do you see this going?
Yeah, I think models will get more capable, right? If you look at ChatGPT, one of the first ones you could try out, it was cool, but compared to GPT-5, it's it's a night and day. Or an alternative is like if you had the first iPhone in your hand and you compare it to iPhone today, it's like night and day.
Right.
But honestly, I wouldn't really know. It's like, I think longer context windows, maybe, right? So at some point you might just throw in your 2 million line code base and ask it very detailed questions or a couple books. And probably the faster it can get, right? You don't have to wait for token by token. It might be instant. But yeah, where it goes is like anyone's guess. And I think because of this competition between all these big giants, like Meta is a big one here, but they just haven't really produced anything very big in the LLM space recently that like rivals Anthropic, OpenAI, or Google. But
perhaps it's not public.
Perhaps, but I feel like they're so behind in the AI race right now, like at least perceived by the public. I think if they had something, like they would probably show it. But again, I don't know. Maybe they have like an amazing model that just floors all the other ones that are out there. But like, would they not just show the world?
Yeah. Thank you for explaining that and giving your insights.
Sure.
I want to ask, what does vibe coding mean? It is a fairly new term, a term that isn't really used or thrown around like ChatGPT just yet. Mm-hmm. What is vibe coding?
So vibe coding is a term that's like thrown around all the time now. And I think it was coined
amongst developers.
Amongst developers, yeah. You're right. Yeah. It was by Karpathy. I think I'm pronouncing his name correctly. He worked, he's a very big AI player. Mm-hmm. I think he was head of AI at Tesla, then worked at OpenAI. I don't know his exact resume, but he knows his stuff. He has a YouTube series on implementing GPT from scratch. Yeah. If you ever want to do that, this guy knows about LLMs, right? And he said, well, sometimes I just work on code and I, just write the prompts and I let the LLM do the coding, and I call it vibe coding. So it's just whatever comes to mind, you write it down in English, right, and the model will write an actual code, and that became vibe coding.
Thank you for the explanation. I definitely did not know.
No?
I knew what it is, but I didn't know who
the origin
created it and where it came from. Another fairly new term is MCP, MCP servers. Mm-hmm. What is it? What is MCP?
I think you mentioned it earlier, right? It's Model Context Protocol.
Yep.
And to my understanding, it's a way for you to have an API that a LLM can call. So you could have an MCP for, let's take GitHub as an example, right? And you can tell an LLM, hey, what are my top 5 most starred GitHub repos? Mm-hmm. And then the LLM will go to its available MCP protocols and say, is there any tool that I can call that's called get repo, get stars, something that's related to the user's input. Yeah. And then it will call it the parameters, get it back, and then synthesize that to the user. So it's talking to the outside world. Mm-hmm. And I think one of the best examples of how MCP is useful is one that I saw when it kind of came out, which if you ask an LLM, what is the weather today?
Yeah.
These LLMs are trained and they have a cutoff date, right? And they will never know what the weather is today because they have a cutoff. But then they call an MCP, it's just basically a very fancy API that actually does have the accurate temperature today, and it will just fit it in and say, oh, well, today it's 90 degrees.
Yeah.
So I think that's, again, I'm by no means an expert on MCP. I've made some small MCP servers that search Udemy courses. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's a very exciting technology so that your LLMs can access the outside world.
Mm-hmm. And these can vary, right? You can have the smallest of the smallest task, like you mentioned, getting weather data.
Yeah, it's a way for it's kind of in the name, right? It's a way for the model to have context provided to it. Mm-hmm. Model context provider. So it could be the weather or the GitHub repos, but there's there's, for example, MySQL MCP. So you can say, hey, in my database, what's the table with the most rows? And then based on the tools that are available, it can figure that out.
Yeah.
So the sky is really the limit with MCPs.
True. Makes sense. What are some good practices when interacting with LLMs, whichever it may be? A lot of times you get to hear, this model sucks. Mm-hmm. This LLM sucks. And do you think it's because the prompt is incorrect? Or do you think it's because the models aren't just strong yet? Or do you think it's a mixture of both?
Yeah, I think it's not one or the other. It's probably a mixture of both. And the model is just a prediction engine, right? So it's how there's this term that they call garbage in, garbage out. So if you feed this model a terrible short prompt, it can generate an infinite sequence. You can say, okay, here's my prompt and generate me 10,000 words. Yeah. It'll just go on. But those 10,000 words will probably be a mess.
Yeah.
Right. So it does depend on the prompt. But then the models are also, as good as their training data. Mm-hmm. And of course, the techniques that these companies have. I don't know any of the actual underlying techniques, but DeepSeek came out with this great technique that now US companies are using. OpenAI has their own ways of doing things.
Yeah.
But what I've said here is if you make a pull request in GitHub, right, and it's 2,000 lines of code, and there's a couple bugs, I don't think you can ever say, oh, oops, that was Cursor, or oops, that was this model. It's like, no, I use these models all the time, right? But I still prompt them, and you should verify the output line by line as if you wrote it yourself.
Yeah.
I think I truly do feel that strongly. It's like, I don't think you should ever blend model unless you're, let's say vibe coder and you're just making a product, you want to build your business, you don't care about the code, right? Yeah, if it breaks, it doesn't work, it's probably, you didn't prompt the model right, but you just keep iterating until it does what you want it to do. But if you're already a software engineer and you know how to write software, you can write great software using an LLM by just writing the requirements down correctly and telling the model exactly what you want. Because when you tell the model exactly what you want, it does an amazing job. But if you give it like half-ass prompts, it's going to hallucinate and it's going to make up half of it and it's going to not do what you want it to do.
Makes sense. Yeah. I want to shift a bit of gears now and ask, what is your advice to young engineers out there that are maybe getting into computer science, thinking about getting into computer science, like college students in this field? What's your advice to them?
I don't know if I'm in like the position to give like really good worldly advice, but I would say if you love computers, if you love programming, I think it's still an amazing field.
Yeah.
But I think if you're just into it for like making money, that's going to be tough because it is all the super low hanging fruit right now is kind of like solvable with LLM. So if you have a bug, there's a string and it's not joined correctly. Mm-hmm. Well, it's pretty likely that an LLM can do that bug, right? But that's how you start out in the career and you get better and better and do bigger projects. So I don't know. It's like, it's the same for writers. Like if you want to share your story, like LLMs are pretty good writers, right? But if you have a story to tell, you'd still tell it. And if you love computers and you think it's super interesting how they work, I think you could still study computer science.
Yeah.
But I saw this podcast with Sam Altman and Theo Vaughn, and Sam said that his son, who was born a couple months ago, might not ever go to college because all the wisdom and intellect will be, by these models.
Yeah.
I don't know if I agree with that, but I mean, he is in a pretty good position to like fantasize about this future. And I think there is some truth to it, right? If you are a young kid now and you're studying law and you have to remember all these laws and whenever they apply, like I think LLMs are going to be really good at that, right? They will they can have every single law that's ever been written in every country, whatever language, laws from the past, from now. It's like anything that requires just rote memory. And I'm not saying law is just memory, but like if it's majority like memorizing things, I think you're going to have a tough time beating LLMs.
Yeah.
But a lot of it still requires critical thinking. And for example, software development, like writing code isn't actually the biggest part of your job, right? It's like, what are the requirements? What are the constraints? Who do I have to work with? Okay, let me set up a meeting, talk to them. Like, what do we need? What's our time frame here? Like, that's not going away just like this. But then sitting down and writing the Python function that, queries the database and renders a React component, that part I think is like going to be done by LLMs more and more and more. But the whole human aspect of it, I don't think can be forgotten. Like that's still very relevant. And if I have a meeting, I don't want to be talking to some LLM. I want to talk to a human. And I don't think I'm alone in this, but I think we'll always want that human connection.
Yeah. I think you mentioned how Sam Altman said his son just might not ever go to college.
Yeah.
And I want to use that to shift into the next question I have for you. We've talked very positively about AI and LLMs now. What are some downsides? What are some negative points that you wish were different? What is your outlook on that?
Okay. Yeah, I think a lot of the creative work is kind of like take an example of like being an artist right now. Like you could make amazing drawings, but there are these LLMs that make just phenomenal. I don't know if you want to call it art, but like if you have 5 drawings, you say these are your references. Now make a 6th one. Like it can do a really good job. Or Google VOs, like make a video of this. Like the lines between like what a human can do and what an LLM does or an AI does, it's like thinner and thinner, right? Like if you take out a text and what's written by a human or by an AI, Like it's getting harder and harder to tell. Even actually, it's impossible to tell if you prompt it right. If you say, don't use EM dashes, add a spelling mistake here and there, you're never going to know what's an LLM.
Yeah.
So to answer your question, what I think is a downside, I think is we might lose some like intrinsic motivation. Like, why would I write a 10-page story about something I'm passionate about if I can just prompt an LLM and say, write a 10-page story about JavaScript, and it will just go ahead and do it, right? There's just that intrinsic motivation, like just like, yeah, I could do it, but the LLM can do it much easier. And I think that resistance, I think that's one thing. And the other thing is just like cognitive decline, right? If you, and I noticed this myself too, before I ever had a bug, I would like read the stack trace, go figure out where all these files are, open them, like make a mental model. I'm like, okay, this is it. And I fix the bug and I'm like, sweet. Took half an hour, but I got it.
Yeah.
And now I just copy and paste it into Cursor and I say, fix this. Cursor goes like, let me open this file. Ah, I see the issue. It's this thing. Boom, fixed. It's like way faster.
Uh-huh.
And it requires way fewer brain cycles on my part. But it like, I use my brain less, right? So that would make me dumber.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's the big two things.
Yeah, makes sense. I want to ask you, what is the fine line for college students between, for in terms of using LLMs to help them? Do you draw it at, do not make it do your assignments? Do you draw it X, Y, and Z? What is your thought on that? Like,
that is a good question.
Yeah,
that's a really good question. Well, I went to a pretty college in the Netherlands, so I'm like definitely not the most wisdomful here. But I would say, like you said, don't have the LLM do the assignments, 100%. But one thing I love LLMs for is like you can give it something that you're trying to understand. Like, hey, I don't get this. Can you explain it to me? Like, and a lot of these, like for example, ChatGPT also has like memory. So if you told it in the past, like, hey, I went to France on vacation, and then you say, hey, can you explain this to me? Mm-hmm. Like these LLMs can then go back and be like, okay, well, imagine you're on your trip in France, and they can create analogies that you can relate to.
Yeah.
So I think LLMs are like amazing at explaining things to you in detail that you need, right? You can say, okay, explain to me how HTTP works. And you can go very simple, like, okay, just a simple HTTP request, or like in all different network layers, right? So I think getting responses tailored to how much you want to know and need to know, that's like a unique thing LLMs can provide, right? Your professor will give a class and it's aimed at students, but some students might be super advanced and think, oh, this is way too easy. Yeah. And other students may be like, I don't know anything that they're saying, right? But with an LLM, you can be like, hey, this is what I need to learn. And I don't even understand A, B, and C. Yeah. And then the LLM is like, okay, well, let's start here. And same for the advanced students, like, oh, the class is talking about this. I already know this. Like, how can you go deeper? Well, look at A, B, and C. Mm-hmm. So I think ChatGPT has like study mode. I think using it like that is a huge positive. Like, explain this to me in terms, or like, what else can I look at to make me more knowledgeable about the subject?
Totally makes sense. And I agree with that as well. Making the LLM just do your homework or school projects, whatever it may be, isn't the best choice, because even when you step into the field, you think you're going to use LLM. Well, that's true, but it varies. Yeah. You're not going to make it do the entire thing. And if someone's going to bring you on board, but you better know how to judge the code. Yeah. You better know whether it's right for them or not. Mm-hmm.
And in order to be able to do so, you need to also write code, right? You can read a million books on how to drive a car. As soon as you step into that car, if you've never driven a car, that's going to be a very different experience. And the same is, you can use all these LLMs to write code for you, and it works. But then at some point, you have to deeply understand it or write your own code. You're like, what do I do? Right? So you have to also do it.
Makes sense. And I want to ask you one last question.
Sure.
You've made a decent presence of yourself at Udemy. Talking to you, I can be like, how does this guy know everything? Essentially, you've obviously sifted through many companies and sifted through a lot of positions. How did you do it? Like, and I'm sure there's not one thing or one key point that brought you here. And I also want to know, did you have any pivotal moments throughout your career that you believe has really helped your progress up till here?
Yeah. Okay, so there's like a few questions. The pivotal moments on first.
Yes.
I think joining Udemy was a pivotal moment where I was always front end. I was like, I will only ever do front end. I don't care about back end. And then I got this opportunity to work at Udemy, and they're like, well, we'd love to hire you, but you have to be full stack. So then I started learning Python and Django. I'm like, I can do the whole thing now. This is way better. Yeah. So I think joining Udemy was a pivotal moment, and always being able to work on different projects, right? Oh, and now we're going to do microservices with Spring Boot and Kotlin. Okay, I have to learn this now. So that definitely helped. And like you mentioned, like, oh, I know so much. I actually don't think, I think I have a good breadth of knowledge. Like I know a little bit about a lot of things. Yeah. But the trade-off is that there's not always depth equally. I think I have pretty deep knowledge of like JavaScript, Python, Django now. And I'm like, okay at Kotlin, but do I have like deep knowledge? I don't think so. And or these LLMs, like I can tell you all these models and like how they're good. Do I know how they work? Not really, right?
Yeah.
So I think my curiosity has been both a blessing and a curse. Like I'm curious about everything, and that's why I try everything out, and I love it. But then, you know, I try it out, and after 2 weeks, you know, I've bought all the books, I've bought all the things you can think of, and then I'm like, oh wait, there's this thing over here. Let me try that out. But I think if you have that curiosity, that I think I might have too much, where I like too distracted and want to see everything. Mm-hmm. If you can just be curious, that's like I think you need to be curious if you want to be successful.
Yeah. Thank you for all the answers, Jilles, all the advice that you provided. Like while I had an idea of many of the nuances that we talked about, I think it's more concrete now.
Awesome.
And thank you so much for coming on, Jilles.
Yeah, man, this was awesome. I gave you answers to the best of my knowledge. I don't even know if everything is correct, but it's what I currently believe as correct. And, you know, my mind changes all the time. But yeah, man, this was awesome.
Thank you. It was always a pleasure.
Appreciate it.
Thanks.